This conference will now be recorded.
Do you have any agenda items or any options for the team to discuss today?
You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, yeah. I started to thinking about device firmware stuff, so I have some like thoughts to discuss with the team.
Okay. Just we added to the agenda. Let's just check anybody else has any options, anything to discuss. Anyone from either DAS or Flex or Jay? Do you have any items you want to discuss today?
I don't have any.
Okay. If not, just a kind of update on the ongoing agenda. I will try to send the agenda for next week. Not next week, the following week. The one important thing is we really need to finalize the global summit presentations, as well as the one of the items that we were discussing on the panel. And also we need to finalize the list of the roadmap for this year. That is another areas we want to work on it. I will try to put together some agenda for the week after next, so that we can have some discussion on along those lines. If nothing else, then you can take over, Jonathan.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. Let me get myself ready.
Sure. One more probably update. I don't know how many of you were able to join the last week APEC meeting. We had a Sujay and the team presented the GPU firmware update. So if you didn't have a chance to listen, I would encourage you to listen to that conversation.
Sorry, could you repeat? I didn't hear you.
GPU firmware update.
Okay.
The topic was, yeah, I think if you recall, like in hardware fault management, there was a presentation there. Now this is an extended version of that presentation to focus on the firmware update portion that was presented in the last week's OSF meeting.
In the OSF OCP OSF project meeting?
Yes. In the it's on the Wednesday evening APEC time, friendly time, right?
Okay. I didn't understand. Who gave the presentation?
So Joy and team. So we had a Google, NVIDIA, and Microsoft presented it.
Oh, I see. Okay. Cool. That's good. Okay. So let me share my screen. Hold on a second. Okay. So I'm sharing my screen, right? I don't have. So this is basically just like put down some of my thoughts that, and so that we have open discussion on this as a team. So as problem statement for device firmware, from the CSP's viewpoint, I think they are looking at like inventory, right? So I have, on the server, there are a lot of firmwares, right? Device firmwares. Like some chips as small as like PCI retimer is so small, but they also have firmware run inside. So there will be from the management viewpoint, there are a lot of images coming in. Now, for each image, how do I know this image is what's the version for the image, and what it is for what firmware, right? So that's what I just jot down as like image-based inventory. and then runtime inventory. Once the firmware is running, how do I know the properties of the firmware? So runtime inventory, and then update. There are many different types of update mechanisms, and then compatibility. Sometimes the firmware have compatibility metrics with each other, or sometimes even with the kernel driver. So compatibility, and then security, like how to authenticate the image, how to attest the image. Stability. Let's say one image doesn't work. How do I fallback? Like there's a common technology called ABG, right? Both you have 3 images on the flash. And how to monitor the runtime behavior and how to debug issues if an issue happens. So I think those are the concerns from the CSP's viewpoint, and then, but it has to live with the embedded constraints, right? The flash will be small, and it cannot be too heavy, right? Some of the industry specs may be too heavy for the embedded processor to run. Otherwise, it would impact the performance of the regular job. And then cost constraints, right? So a small chip itself, it does not cost much, but if we add too many things onto it, then the cost goes up. So CSP has those asks, and then in the meantime, the device vendors has to deal with those together with the constraints, right? So those are the problem statement I'm thinking of. Now, from the OCP OSF as a
Quick
OCP
question,
project, yeah.
Jonathan,
Okay.
on the device. What are the things we want to call it as a device? It will be good to put some boundary condition around what is that device means and
Right,
what we
right, 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 right. Yeah. So what is the definition of the device?
correct.
So I would think besides host, CPU, everything else is a device. Like for example, even on a single DIMM, there are multiple chips on the DIMM, like 20 plus chips on the DIMM. You have DIMM devices, you have PMIC devices, you have SPD devices, and you have RCD devices. Those are all devices. So here we are talking about any device that has a, we could say, um, has a processor. Definitely is a device, right?
Yeah, I think the reason I'm asking this question is if we say SSD, there's an NVMe spec.
Mm.
Even for memory, there is a CXL spec, right?
Right.
Talks about the firmware updates, but in PCI in general does not really talk as standard interface there, right?
PCIe just covers the entire PCIe, all the types of PCIe devices, but then SSD, NVMe, those kind of things are specific PCIe device types. So they have device, so they sometimes they have device update definitions or standards.
Right. I think what I'm saying is we need to really, what are the things going to comprehend and what is the existing spec and what are the new things need to be added in order to comprehend, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good segue to what's our strategy, what's our position as OCP OSF project. So I'm thinking for OCP OSF project, what it could contribute to the industry. We do not want to replace all the existing standards. We do not want to reinvent the wheel, and we do not want to constrain the CSP or constrain the device vendors, right? Otherwise, nobody will listen to OCP OSF materials, right? So I think OCP OSF strategy is like best practices. right, to influence the design and also to give people pointers. And OCP OSF would be best to illustrate the CSP needs. And OCP OSF could also study into industry status. Right. So how to get the above is we would need participation from CSPs and device vendors and IBVs.
Yeah, and also I think few more things, right? Do we want to do a in-band update or out-of-band update? Do you want to have a device to be reset in order to do an update, or you can do a runtime update, or what
We
is the
could
security side
some
also like? Yeah, good.
right. Some device support inside some device support a runtime update, others does not, right? They say if I'm a CSP, I would say for this I definitely need runtime update. But if runtime update is not supported, then what other criteria it has to meet? If it is, next, for example, if it is not crucial to the, if it does not need, if a device can be, firmware can be updated without having to require the host to power cycle, then if you do not do runtime update, it might be okay. For example, I'm just giving you an example that Sammy, you have a good question, but for that question, those are the all details we should discuss, but not necessarily in today's meeting. I think in today's meeting, we want to figure out what's OCP OSF strategy of how to move forward and who should participate.
I will. Anybody's any comments?
Yeah, quick comment. I guess just an observation from my side is I do see a lot of updates going out of band these days, particularly because I think hardware roots of trust are becoming more common in the industry. Um, so I, I I only know of one in particular, which I probably can't say too much about. But yeah, basically, uh,
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a
Mm.
CSP need, right? More and more management needs to be done from the BMC, not necessarily from host.
yeah, and this might
Yeah.
be tricky, especially with like PCIe add-in cards where you might not even have the sideband signals needed in order to um, interface with the card's firmware ROM. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, like I know, for certain CSPs, of course, we can get things customized, but that might not fit too well into the OCP context where you're um, looking more for like off-the-shelf hardware support. Um, so yeah, I think, but then again, I think like PCI has um, I square C, like it has an I square C bus, like just as part of the standard PCIe signals. I thought. I could be wrong about that.
No, it does. It does. The
Oh,
PCI pin does have accuracy.
okay, cool. Yeah, then we might want to think along the lines of, okay, well, we need to make sure that these signals can be routed to a BMC or a hardware root of trust, which can, um, you know, carry out the firmware update. I don't know if there'd need to be some kind of a, special protocol or, something open source where basically the BMC can tell the device to unlock the flash chip, or if it's a discrete SPI flash chip, then the BMC could just take over the signals and um, make sure that the PCI device itself isn't going to try to access the firmware ROM during the update. Yeah, so sorry, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. But yeah, I think you know, even back years ago when OSF originally started, we were talking about doing a lot more of this management from like a BMC. So kind of focus this on out of band updates. Um, I guess some people will still want in band, but yeah, it's kind of hard to come up with one general spec that'll fit everyone's needs. Um, Personally,
Yeah,
from my perspective, I see updates going out of band to some like um, centralized logic, such as you know the hardware root of trust or the BMC. So,
right. I
no,
agree.
nobody wants to wait for the BIOS to do firmware upgrades anymore.
I'm wondering whether as a system level, do we want to put probably a different classifications saying that, yeah, system is capable of in-band only or in out of band only, in-band and out of band. It's only boot time, runtime, all kind of. Do we want to qualify something, and then if we say that the system is out of band capable or required, then you want to have those capabilities available, everything out of band, right?
Yeah, and I think
And
we'll
I'm
end
also
up with
thinking
kind
out
of a
loud,
mix.
right? How do we categorize it so that we can say, like, in this category it's needed, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think we'll end up with a mix of those with those components. But I mean, from the open system firmware perspective, the important thing is no matter if you require an in-band update or an out-of-band update, that the documentation and you know the if not the software, then at least the register specifications that are needed to carry out that update need to be published somewhere that's freely available. And this is like a big problem with a lot of the firmware upgrade mechanisms in like proprietary BIOSes, for example, is that you know they rely on these system management mode routines that are you know you could reverse engineer them, but most enterprises don't want to do that, and so you know that wouldn't fly under the OSF banner, I would hope. Like basically, yeah, you could require firmware updates to be done in band or out of band, but you know no matter that access mechanism, it has to be open so that you know a CSP can download the register spec or download the protocol specification and implement um, you know implement that routine in their own software that they use to orchestrate the rest of the firmware updates. Anyway, those are just some of my thoughts. I'll shut up now so other people can chip in.
Yeah, those are good analysis. Now, so as OCP OSF project, how should we uh, analyze those inputs and then make it some analyze it and make it in a form that can contribute to the industry. Okay, and that helps both CSPs and device vendors and IPVs.
So maybe another question is, what is lacking today, right? For the device side, is it lacking on the standards work? Like what I'm kind of meaning by that is, if you look at NVMe, there is a standards work done to how do you download firmware and update. CXL is also defined their spec, but PCIe in general, my understanding is that spec does not really call out what is that mechanism for downloading and updating the firmware, right?
Yeah, from the device vendors viewpoint, right? It's like too many specs is confusing, and the different CSPs or different customer have different asks. That
Yeah,
would
but
be
how
the
do we
template.
unify it,
Yeah.
right? I think that's OCP's work, right? How do we how do we bring a standards across that what is not available and unify it, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So in other words, what is the real requirements? I think we should define the requirements, even if you take a security, right? What are the things, the requirements, right? And even device side is really classes of devices, right? Like I'm saying that, right? Does a SSD or NVMe has a different class and like memory, right? even though both are storage, it provides different purposes, right? In the memory has to be sitting there all the time. If it is SSD, it's more of a DMA based thing, right? And how do we map the other remaining part of a PCIe device, right? GPU probably a totally a different animal compared to video and other things, right?
So Sammy, do you have the link to the PowerPoint that they shared on Wednesday meeting for the GPU stuff?
I think Neil was got the recording, and my understanding is he was posting it. I didn't look at the latest email things sent out, but
Okay.
my understanding is it was recorded. But I was expecting Neil will post it, or he might have already done it.
Yeah. So if after this meeting you could send out the link to either the recording or the PowerPoint, that would be great.
Right.
I want to take a look.
Sure. So, what do we want to do the next step here to move forward in this? Like, do we want to classify or put some way to classify it and say like, sometimes we can say like, yes, standards, everything need to be exist for any kind of usage model. Also, sometimes we might say like, you don't probably need everything, but you probably need a specific classes of devices need support certain stuff, right?
Yeah, we need people from CSP like David, right? He has good points, and then other people from CSP, the brainstorm about what are the needs from the CSP side,
I
right?
think what I'm probably looking, Jonathan, to kind of for the conversation. Do we want to create some Q&A kind of survey or poll kind of thing, so that people can do offline reading and kind of give us some input on it? Then we can bring a summary here and have a discussion.
So you're saying that starting drafting some document.
Drafting some Q&A. Yes, finally we want to bring a requirement. I'm just throwing an idea. So one way is CSPs are bringing their requirement, and we are trying to work towards kind of come with a common agreement, right? That is one way of doing it. Assuming you have multiple CSPs coming and presenting it here, right?
Yeah.
Or other way is we should draft a poll, then you can send it out to the whole OSF and not just CSP, right? Anybody else also can. We have different variety of companies participating, and they can give input on that.
Mm-hmm.
Then we
So
can bring
yeah,
it up.
I can start a strawman document for people to give you feedbacks. So now how about how do we share the documents? I mean the collaterals, right? One way to do that is in the OCP neat Google Drive, create a folder and give me write access, and then give me write access, and other people who need write access to give them write access, and then we can collaborate from there. But for example, right now this document is from my personal Google Drive. I don't want to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can ask for a share folder for OSF, and we can all of us can put the documents there.
Yeah. If you could create a directory
Right.
in the Google Drive and share it with me and other people, then I can put this document, and then I can start to write something down to invoke conversations.
Yeah, for me it kind of looks like each category is right. We need to have a detailed discussion on what is the detailed requirements, and make sure that here is a set of requirements, here is a mechanism to satisfy the requirements, right? I think what you have is a good starting point, but we need to have a little more concrete requirements, right?
Yeah. It's not requirement per se. It's more like asks or wants.
Yeah,
Because OCP OSF does not really is not really a customer to any device vendor, so it's not. We may want to avoid the terminology of requirement. Yeah,
it's just
my thinking.
consensus request, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. That's I have for this topic, I think.
Oh, hey, one more thing to throw in there, just along the lines of stuff that should be expected from vendors. I'm thinking maybe, at least for the out of band portion, maybe like a implementation for updating firmware via. Well, I don't know if we even want to get into like buses or anything like that, but something that can be run from like an open BMC environment and is open source and licensed under like a BSD style license, so that vendors can then take it and repackage it with their firmware. So basically,
Oh.
that just goes along with documentation is a reference implementation that can run from either a host, x86 or ARM processor, or OpenBMC would be great.
Mm-hmm. So for the surrounding tools, like for example, the tools you talk about the firmware update tool running on OpenBMC, you're saying that those kind of things should be open source. That's what you're saying. Or
Yep.
reference implementation.
Yeah. Just an open source reference implementation that CSPs and other vendors can run with.
Right.
And then kind of like, I guess, NVMe tool or one of those, the reference implementation almost becomes a standard because it gains a lot of popularity.
Yeah. Not firmware itself, right? Open firmware itself, of course, would be closed source, but for the like tools.
Yeah, the management updates, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Right. Okay, makes sense.
I think that's the only topic we had today. Any other comments or opens from the team? Yeah, if not, then Thank you, Jonathan, for bringing the topic here, and thank you for the
Sure.
team participation. We can adjourn now, and we can meet back next Wednesday. I think Neil also trying to get a list of agendas for a discussion next week. Then we will meet back a week after next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, team. Talk to you.